hanging in the balance, terrified.
Yeah.
It's like somebody's pot of gold and saying, no, no one can have it.
Vera, did you make it in? Are you here? Yes, you're here. Great. I just still have your other account joining in purgatory. Carmen, let's do the damn thing.
Let's rock and roll, guys. Welcome in. If you have not muted yourself, please do so we can get going without interruptions. We thank you so much for joining us here on Reclaim Our Vote. If this is your first time here, welcome. We're so happy and so excited to have you part of our little family over here where we talk about things related to the ballots and voting and break down the different officials or different programs or constructions that create our world outside, and it creates the chaos that we currently are fighting against in our own ways. And so we're here to talk about those things, how we can make it better, how we can go to these polling stations in November and be able to make educated voting choices. The system is set up to confuse us for a reason. And we're here to say no longer can we be just ignorant and just mandated with information and feel defeated. We're coming here together to talk about it, to learn. And none of us are experts. We just feel like we're powerful when we're together. And if we can pick a topic, break it down, talk about it together, it just makes it easier on us as individuals. So thank you so much for making this a decision and a part of your choice for the day and choice for your life, because this is important stuff that's happening all around us. And like I said, we can't just sit back and pretend like it's not going on, because it's burning around us. And we're like the little meme with the dog in the chair and the house on fire. That's us. So let's get some water, put the fires out, and really start to create the change that we need in our America. My name is Carmen, and we've got Kyle and Ross here on the call. And we've come together to start this platform for everyone. And so if you have joined us before, we thank you and welcome back. Our partners, we have Black Boys Recycle and we have Be an Ally. They're unable to make our call this evening just for some schedule conflicts, but we'll put their IG handle in our chat, so that way if you guys aren't already tuned in with them and what they're doing, you'll have an opportunity to get some more information about them on Instagram. They're both Black-led, Black-founded organizations that focus on education and providing information to the Black community and allies about, again, how we can make our daily experience in the American life better. So without further ado, guys, we're talking about some really exciting things. Potential candidates for the VP seat for Biden. It's the Veepstakes, which is a word that I didn't know existed. So thank you, Ross, for sharing that term with us, the Veepstakes. It's this really cool time that we're discovering who's actually going to be on the ballot and the tickets for the Democratic position. So that's exciting. And Ross is going to give us some more information on the actual seat of the vice president and what that person does. So Kyle, sorry, why I keep calling you Kyle? Well, Ross wasn't here last week, so I had to
lucky to be Kyle June Williams, honestly. So it's just an honor to be confused for her, really. What's up, everybody? My name is Ross. I live here in Los Angeles in the same wonderful town as Carmen and Kyle. As Carmen said, I'm calling you Kyle now. So we're just doing it all around. Kyle on the brain 2020. Maybe she should be the vice president. Anyway, I work for an organization called Accelerator for America, which is started by my boss, Rick Jacobs, and our co-founder, Mayor Eric Garcetti. I also work on Mayor Eric Garcetti's political team, who happens to be on Vice President Biden's running mate selection committee. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how that process works, why there is a vice president selection committee, what the vetting process is like, what these women are going through right now, at least what we know they may be going through from past vice presidential candidates. And then just overall, like kind of what the vice president does, like what's the point of it? how it came to be what it is today. So anyway, back in April, I think it was April 29th of this year, the Biden campaign released that they had officially formed their vice presidential selection committee, which has since been renamed the running mate selection committee, essentially because having vice president that many times in one description, Vice President Biden names vice president selection committee, it just got a little confusing. So they switched to running mate. There's 4 people that are formally on the selection committee. One of them, as I said, is Mayor Eric Garcetti of Los Angeles. Another one is Congresswoman from Delaware, Lisa Blunt Rochester, former Connecticut Senator and Vice President Biden's longtime good friend, Chris Dodd. And then a former White House aide and Senate council aide to the Vice President, Cynthia Hogan, are the official people that are on this Vice Presidential Selection Committee. Now, what the hell do these people do? What are they doing all day for this past, going on 4 months now that we've been waiting to hear who the running mate's going to be? They're talking to anyone and everyone that they can about these women that are being considered. Not only are they talking to the women that are being considered, and that's exactly right, Vera. It's so awesome to know that whoever this person is a woman, that if Joe Biden wins, there's going to be a woman in the White House. It's so awesome. But so they're talking to these women, they're interviewing them, they're looking at materials, they're looking at records, they're looking at anything they can find about anything that may come up for the rest of the campaign that could be considered dirt, that can be used against the ticket. They're looking at anything and everything. And they're also just talking generally to other elected officials that are prominent leaders in America. They're talking to business leaders across the country. They're talking to major activists and constituent coalition activists. They're talking to anyone with any sort of influence, but more so that has their finger on the pulse of the American people. Like, what are the people in your community saying is really important that they need to have, that they think that would complete this ticket, right? So they're doing all of that. It's really, whenever these people are not doing their other job, they are in some way on calls with each other, on calls with the campaign, on calls with the people they're interviewing. It's a very intense
talking about the people who are on the committee to find
serious decision,
and
right?
vet.
So I also want to say that there's been a couple times where someone got announced that they were being vetted and the internet freaked out, just completely lost their minds. One time was when it was announced that Amy Klobuchar was being vetted. And so people are like, oh my God, Amy Klobuchar's the pick. The world is over. That's what left progressive Twitter was doing, which is a complete overreaction, because there's 16 women who have been vetted for this position. And vetted basically means what I said before, that they are going through your record. They're going through everything you've ever done that might be brought up during this process. And there was a retired admiral, James his last name is very complicated. Hold on. Stavridis, Stavridis maybe, who was running to be, not running, but being considered to be Hillary Clinton's vice president. And he had this to say when it came to what the vetting process was like. Obviously, they wanted my taxes. They also wanted, and this is interesting to me, I think, my complete medical records and my dental records. They asked for every article I'd ever published, transcripts of every school that I'd attended. I remember looking at the stack of documents that I had to send them, and it was well over 2 feet tall. So that's just the amount of paperwork for one of these people. And right now, at this moment, I think there are seriously 11 women that are being considered. So that's, 22 feet of paper that this committee and the Biden campaign is sifting through to find the right one. They also are not only going through the different candidates, they're also looking into their husbands, their partners, their kids, their longtime friends and family members, anything that those people might have done or said or tweeted that could be brought up as well. So it's really insane. like a scandal or a personal liability of a spouse or something actually brought down Walter Mondale's campaign in 1984. Basically, her Geraldine Ferrero's husband had some like dodgy finance records that came up, and it like helped to tank the whole candidacy. So it happened before. So people like Doug Emhoff, Kamala Harris's husband, who's an attorney, they're probably digging through all of his past clients. They're probably digging through emails and things that he sent that are sketchy or could be considered sketchy, things like that. So why are they doing this? Why is it so important? Because it's often said that a vice president is not necessarily going to do anything to help promote a ticket, but it could absolutely crash it. And we probably, most of us remember Sarah Palin in 2008, John McCain. You know, he picked her as this kind of wild card, really exciting ticket because he felt that his campaign was kind of floundering. And then she ended up being a total disaster, right? So they say that the two most important days for the vice presidential candidate during the campaign are the day that the candidate is announced and on the vice presidential debate day, because there's only one time you like really have to prep for during the campaign besides your various appearances when you're the vice presidential candidate, and it's that debate, because there's only one. It's against the sitting vice president or the other vice presidential candidate, and it's like your big moment. With COVID going on, with Donald Trump being the incumbent, I mean, who knows if we're even going to have a vice presidential debate. But any one of these women that are being considered that we're going to go through in a minute, I would just love to see them go up against former Indiana Governor Mike Pence. It will be great. So a little bit about, and I'll try and be quick because I'm running out of time. A little bit about, you know, how the vice presidency came to be. Initially, it was the framers were trying to figure out what was going to happen. And for a long, long time, basically the person who came in second in the election, the presidential election, just became the vice president. And that was built out of what they had done with the colony's governors at the time. So if you were the governor of the colony or the early state, whoever the lieutenant governor was the person who ran against you. So that was how they did it for a long time. And into trying to figure out what this person would do, their main role was to be the president of the Senate. So they were kind of the ruling body of the ruling member of the Senate. They don't vote in the Senate, but they are in charge of like when there's a tie in voting in the Senate, because the Senate, there's 100 senators. So it can go 50-50 technically. They come in and they cast the tie-breaking vote one way or the other. They also, if there's a senatorial appointment, like the president has appointed a judge or a cabinet position, and if there's a tie, yay or nay on that person, the vice president will come in and cast that tie-breaking vote as well. It's become much more in recent times a kind of ceremonial role within the Senate. There's a lot of pomp and circumstance put around like, oh, and here comes Vice President Joe Biden to cast a tie-breaking vote. I wonder what he'll do. So it's really just a lot of like news cycle stuff because we all know, because they're just kind of another fixture of the administration at that point. And they are, we know that their main role is to be an extension of the president when the president can't be around. They do take on their own task forces, their own administrative goals. The Vice President Biden was really crucial in helping to swing votes and to whip votes for Obama because he was so familiar with the Senate for a long, long time. So he was really valuable there. But anymore, you know, it has been known to be where your campaign can go to die, right? Because if you just kind of sit and wait your turn, wondering maybe if something's going to happen to the president, you can go in there and like get your moment to shine. But there's so much, and we're going to get into this in a minute, there's so much energy and attention being paid to this vice president to be because of the circumstances of our nominee. He's older. He's even floated the fact that maybe he'd take a one-term pledge. So there's a lot of speculation that this vice presidential candidate is the nominee in waiting, as it were, for 2024. So that's why there's so much scrutiny being paid to these women. And we're going to talk about all of them right now.
Amazing. Very exciting stuff. Again, you know, if Biden is chosen and elected, not chosen, sorry, if he's elected, you know, we'll have a woman in the White House, which is very exciting stuff. So we've got the top 11 or so that are, you know, being considered. We've got Kamala Harris, the senator from California. She was a former 2020 candidate, also a former California attorney general. There's Tammy Duckworth, who's a senator from Illinois, a veteran who lost both legs in a helicopter crash. We have Karen Bass, which is a representative from California and chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. There is Val Demings, a representative from Florida, and also was a prosecutor in the Trump impeachment trial and also a former Orlando sheriff. There's Susan Rice, former ambassador to the UN under President Obama. There's Keisha Lance Bottoms, who is the current mayor of Atlanta. We've got Gretchen Whitmer, who is the governor of Michigan. Catherine Cortez Masto, who is the senator, a senator from Nevada. There's Stacey Abrams, the 2018 Georgia governor candidate, and also the former Georgia House Minority Leader and the founder of Fair Fight 2020. And then Michelle Lujan Grisham, if I said that correctly, who is the governor of New Mexico. So really diverse group of women there, really new and exciting concepts that are going to be brought to the White House in any event. So that's really exciting. So what we're going to do for the rest of our time here, we're going to kind of break down the top 6 that kind of spotlight some of the more viable candidates here. And Kyle is going to start us off.
All right. Also, I just want to throw out Pod Save America did a 3-part breakdown of the VP, and they spoke with someone who actually handled all of the meetings that the like Barack Obama would have with all of his potentials and so on, and John Kerry and things like that. And it's incredibly interesting. It's called That's the Ticket. I'll put it in our weekly email. I can't recommend it enough just to listen to. Also, one thing that they talked about, which I think is super important to think about, is whatever woman he does decide to go with, I think all eyes are going to be on how she's going to react to the allegations against sexual misconduct with him. And it's all going to rest on how she responds. So I think there's so much latent within this. It's crazy. I'm going to go with Tammy first, Tammy Duckworth. So she is an Army veteran. She lost both her legs in a helicopter crash while piloting it in Iraq in 2004, and she was shot down by a rocket-propelled grenade. She's the first disabled woman and first person born in Thailand to be an elected official in the Senate. Also, she had a baby at 50 and was the first senator to give birth while in office. She served in the Obama administration's Veterans Affairs Department from 2009 to 2011 after nearly 4 years as director of the Illinois VA. So she's like very heavy within like the Army and all that. But the cons are that she is clearly from the moderate camp. A lot of people think she's too far left, or she's not far left enough, but might be able to still win the Midwest. They are unsure, though, how she would be able to hold herself on a Democratic in a debate because she hasn't had a lot of like on the floor debates, and that is something that we're worried about. Another wishy-washy thing that has come up is her views on taking down the monuments. She was caught like basically in a conversation about taking a George Washington statue down, and she went back and forth with Tucker Carlson. And it basically came down to the fact that she doesn't believe that that monument would be taken down, but she does believe in free speech, and she does believe in supporting Americans. So in other words, she doesn't want the monument taken down, but she recognizes that he's a slave owner. It's very crazy. Okay, Kamala Harris. Okay, she was a Democratic member of the U.S. Senate from California, first elected in 2016. She was the first Black woman elected to the U.S. Senate and the first Indian American to serve in her chamber. She's the former Attorney General of California, and she served in that position from 2011 to 2017. As we all know, she ran for presidency, which is really good because that means that she's also sort of like vetted by the American people as well as vetted as a potential candidate to run. She's an experienced campaigner. She's won in 2003 and 2007 in the San Francisco District Attorney and in three statewide elections as Attorney General in 2010, 2014, U.S. Senator is 2016. So she's won a ton. Granted, one of those races, she only won by 1%, and that was in San Francisco. One of the things that we're a little wishy-washy on is she is from a state where Democrats already reign. So usually what they look for in a VP is for them to come from a swing state, so it allows votes to come in. And these, I'm just going to cut down really quick to the things she is known for, just because she's one of like the top contenders people are talking about. She helped broker mortgage relief in California. She refused the ban on gay marriage. This was like actually a big one. She refused to defend Proposition 8, a 2000 ballot measure approved by California voters that banned gay marriage after it was struck down by the federal court in 2013. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the proponents of the measure did not have the legal standings to defend Proposition 8 on appeal after she and Senator Brown, I believe it was, had refused to also do so. The case was dismissed on technical grounds, but she sort of was the first one to put her foot down and say no, and then others followed. She refused to seek the death penalty. She's like really like does not believe in the death penalty, even after there was a big case where a cop was shot and it was a 22-year-old gang member who shot him, and she refused to seek the death penalty and got a lot of backlash for that. Delays in confiscations of guns from dangerous Californians. So a big thing that she did is like basically she in 2013 a state auditor's report criticized the Department of Justice overseen by Harris, and basically she refused to confiscate. She didn't refuse, but she like didn't act quick enough, and then when it came up around again, she didn't do it again. So refusing to confiscate guns. She sued for-profit Corinthian colleges for misleading students, which was also something we talked about with Betsy DeVos, which is they brought on students under false pretenses saying that they would get jobs, and then they didn't, and so she went and she sued them and they won. Increased transparency on in-custody deaths, but opposed independent investigation of police shootings. So basically, she hasn't been that great on that record about she's opposed independent investigations of police shootings as opposed to like them being handled out of court. And this she launched the Back on Track program, which was to reduce recidivism. Recidivism is the tendency of a convicted criminal to reoffend. It did really well. It was a program that was implemented in a bunch of other states as a result, although one of the flaws that they're calling it, which was like a backlash because of it, was because when she brought it to Los Angeles, an immigrant entered the program, and once he did, he like stole a car and like stole this lady's purse, and she was injured in the process of it. And it like erupted that like illegal immigrants cannot be a part of this. And so they have now updated the program to not accept illegal immigrants, which is kind of, yeah, so that's just the brief overview of Miss Harris.
All right. Thank you, Kyle, for that. We really appreciate learning more. I think this is going to be a really interesting selection process. Just as you've been researching, and so have I and Ross. So it's, again, just very exciting stuff that's going on around the Veepstakes. I'm gonna kind of break down a little bit and talk to you all about Elizabeth Warren and Karen Bass. I'm going to start with another former 2020 presidential candidate, Elizabeth Warren. She is currently the senior senator of Massachusetts since 2013. She's also a former special advisor to the Secretary of the Treasury on the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. She was actually the first elected, first female senator in Massachusetts. She's grew up in Oklahoma, born in Oklahoma, a daughter of a janitor, and became a law professor at Harvard. So, just regular person like you and I. She also, on her views, as she was running, we saw her go against the big banks and the big companies, and, really wanted that as a focal point of her candidacy. She would be known as like an economic populist. So she's appealing to the interests of the general public, especially in contrasting with those interests with the elite. So again, taxing the wealthy, income equality, and then, really reining in on these big tech companies. And she also, in her presidential candidacy, she did not accept big donations. So, kind of going against the grain in that way. She also popularized ideas like a federal wealth tax and Medicare for all, which coincidentally, it actually contradicts with Biden's plan to expand the Affordable Cares Act. So that's an interesting kind of polarization there. And overall, when she was running, she did poll well with Black voters and Democrats in the early primary states. So, that's also a good thing. A drawback was there are some things that came up while she was running, and she's kind of had to come out and publicly apologize. One of which, I don't know if you all remember, but she did claim like Native American ancestry. In 1986, she actually wrote in her race or nationality, she wrote Native American. This was on the Texas State Bar registration card. And, the guy in the White House, President Trump, he made a spectacle, and he called her Pocahontas, and just a real reality show kind of spat that went on. And she did like a ancestry.com sort of thing, and did her DNA, and they did like a video about it, and she used it as like marketing. And it was found out, and I quote, "The fact suggests that you absolutely have a Native American ancestor in your pedigree." And when that was broken down further, I mean, it was in a fraction of percentage of how that could have been the case. But regardless, the whole, criticism that surrounded this was the fact that she used it to kind of be used on paper as a minority to get ahead. So that she received backlash for that, which, you gotta be ready to answer to some types of questions or prove or, provide paperwork if you're gonna do something like that. So that was a little bit like cringeworthy kind of reading about that and seeing how that unfolded. But regardless, I think that let me not say what I think. She is definitely, talking about, the huge gap that's happening. We've got the upper class and the middle class, especially in the midst of this crisis, is dissolving, and it's scary. And, even with the bailouts that happened, these big corporations got them, and we currently are running out of unemployment benefits. And so, having somebody like her on the ballot would certainly bring light to these issues and help help us, you know what I mean? So we'll see how that goes. And so now I'm going to switch over to Congresswoman Karen Bass. She's currently serving as a U.S. representative for California's 37th congressional district, and she's been there since 2013. Prior to that, she was representing the 33rd district, and that was from 2011 to 2013. She's also the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, and has essentially, like, kind of going through briefly about her life and what she's done. She's really been an activist, and it seems like she's really devoted her life to social and economic justice just through various activisms. And really, as she's been quoted to say in some interviews I watched, that, you know, she cares about the work and not necessarily becoming an elected official. It's about putting in the work, doing the work, and making things happen. Last week, we talked about police reform, and we talked about the Justice and Policing Act, and she was one of the heads of this, which the bill it seeks to end qualified immunity, track problematic officers by a nationwide database, make lynching a federal crime, and ban chokeholds. Police reform is kind of like her specialty, as she's been an advocate for years now on refunding communities. You know, we're talking about defunding police. She likes to focus on refunding communities and sees the obvious problems with the money that's given to police and prisons, but not, you know, preventative matters and measures to allocate money elsewhere so we don't have prisons and they're so expensive. You know, it's actually a huge money thing. So just looking at these really obvious problems, and it's very on brand for what's happening right now in 2020. So she's really done the work in these areas that are being looked at right now. So yeah, just going back to how police and prisons are just these cash cows, and we're putting a lot of money there and leaving our communities desolate with nothing, and then it's just a huge cycle, right? We're learning more about this prison, school to prison pipelines and things like that. And she also sees the areas that are disproportionately affected by our current pandemic that's going on, you know, COVID, and she sees how Black and brown people are dying disproportionately, and that there's also a system in place there as to why that's happening. She worked in trauma centers in Los Angeles during the AIDS epidemic, and she emphasizes with healthcare workers, and she sees how the correlation between, you know, the crack epidemic and AIDS and COVID, and how that's hitting Black and brown communities really hard. So she has real experience and has some type of vantage point of seeing this kind of play out in a different perspective that perhaps an older white constituent wouldn't. Just to wrap it up, she also pushed for the unemployment benefits to be extended. That's still stuck in the Senate, and it's stuck. And, you know, again, there's other agendas that are at work, but from what I've read, she seems just like a people person, and she wants to see, especially for Black people, you know, our needs be met, and that we are no longer affected negatively by the systems and systematic racisms that plague our healthcare and our police and our education system. So yeah, that were my two potential candidates. We're gonna go to Ross to wrap up with the last two.
Great. Thank you, Carmen. Dan, thank you, Kyle. Both of you were just very efficient on those four incredible women. So I'm rounding out kind of our top six here. Again, like, it could be any one of these women. It's not necessarily these top six. These top six are, I think, who's getting a lot of traction as far as headlines, as far as stories go. So we're kind of focusing on them because you might hear about them a little bit more. I'm going to start with Congresswoman Val Demings of Florida. She represents Florida's 10th congressional district, which is in the Orlando area. Some of you may be familiar with her if you really watched the impeachment proceedings. She was one of the prosecutors in the impeachment case against Donald Trump. She kind of rose to fame during the Mueller hearings back in, I think, July of last year, where Robert Mueller was testifying against in Congress. She kind of was one of the people that really while Robert Mueller was, I don't know if you guys remember, but like he was really sticking to his talking points. He was not elaborating. He was not like giving one way or the other. And Val Demings was one of the people that was able to question him in a way that got him to give a little up. And so she kind of rose to fame, propelled up after that. She grew up in the Jacksonville area of Florida. She was really poor growing up. Her mom was a maid. Her dad was a janitor, I think. And she's the youngest of 7. So there are a lot of mouths to feed. So it was very, they rationed a lot. They scraped by. They did what they had to do. She got her first job at 14. So she's just really was built kind of knowing that you have to pull your own weight. And she was the first member of her family to graduate from college. She graduated from Florida State University. When she graduated, she basically recognizing what poverty can do to families and to children, she wanted to help to alleviate that, or to give families the means to do better and to do the best with what they have. So she went into social work, specifically with foster children. She was one of the few women she saw in that field in the 80s. And in really all areas of public service and law enforcement. Because of that, because of the disproportionate amount of men to women across the law enforcement field, she was inspired to kind of make a jump and become a officer herself, where she ended up working for the Orlando Police Force for a 27-year career. She worked in essentially every single department of the Orlando Police Force, including being the chief of the Special Operations Division, and eventually rising to 2 terms as the chief of police for Orlando. She originally ran for Congress in, I think, 2012 and lost, and then ran again in 2016 and won. So she's only a 2-term congresswoman, which is pretty remarkable that she's kind of propelled up as quickly as she has. She is really, she's really charismatic. When she's on the floor, she is very, she's magnetic. You kind of want to know, you want to listen to her, which is why she's getting a lot of heat and a lot of attention. And obviously she's from Florida as well. And she's a Black woman. So that, demographically speaking, she can really help bring the coalition together. And Florida, as Kyle well knows, being Florida, it could help swing that state to the Democratic Party as well. That's what the Biden campaign might be thinking. I have a clip of Val that I want to play just because, I hope it works, because you never know if audio is going to translate like the video will, but we'll see. If not, I'll just I'll put the link in the chat and y'all can watch it later. If this works, please look how Representative Pramila Jayapal is looking at Val Demings while she's talking, because you can just this is how a lot of people feel about her. And it's so great. So I'm going to try and share my screen here. Bear with me. Boop. Yes, share there. All right, let's see if this works.
I've taken 4 oaths in my lifetime, 2 as a law enforcement officer and 2 now as a member of Congress. Different oaths, different times and different places, but each oath stated that I will protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. My oath was not to an individual. It wasn't to a political party or institution. My oath was to the United States Constitution. And I come before you tonight as an African-American female. I come before you tonight as a descendant of slaves. Slaves who knew they would not make it, but dreamed and prayed that one day that I would make it. I come before you tonight proclaiming that in spite of America's complicated history, my faith is in the Constitution. And I say that today with perfect peace. I've enforced the laws and now I write the laws. And I know that nobody is above the law, but the law means nothing If the accused, whether the man who breaks in your house or the president, can destroy evidence, stop witnesses from testifying, and blatantly refuse to cooperate in the investigation, I ask you to name somebody in your family or in your community who can do that. The president is the commander-in-chief, and his responsibility is great. However, our president put his personal interests above the interests of the nation, corrupting and cheating our democracy, and he shall be held accountable. The framers were so concerned about a president abusing his power that they gave us the power of impeachment. George Washington was particularly concerned about unprincipled men finding their way into the White House. Well, those times have found us, and we only have one option, and that's to hold this president accountable, because you know what? Nobody is above the law. Thank you, and I yield back.
So I like her. She's pretty cool. I mean, there are obviously some problems with she was in law enforcement for 27 years, right? And you know, there was some surveys done. There was some cases. This data shows that complaints against the police actually went up during the time in which she was the chief of police. But like, there are gonna be these negatives with every single one of these women. Obviously, these are all people. They all have their records before they were in politics. That's how these things go. But with the moment that we're in right now, you kind of have to weigh the options. Like, yes, she is a Black woman. Yes, she is from a swing state. Yes, her record against Donald Trump is clear. However, as we learned with Jackie Lacey, as we've learned, like, just because she's a Black woman does not mean that, you know, she's the right choice. Her record needs to speak for itself, and the good and the bad. So that's Val Demings. Next is who I'm going to talk about is Susan Rice. She was the UN ambassador under Obama during his first term, and then was worked for the National Security Council during his second term. She is, as with all these women, like, it's not surprising that she's incredibly smart. She graduated from Stanford University, was a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford, with a focus on international affairs. She first got her start in the White House under Bill Clinton as part of his National Security Council. Eventually, she was the Assistant Secretary on African Affairs. She was appointed by Madeleine Albright. At the time that she was appointed by Madeleine Albright, who'd known her for a long time, Madeleine Albright was actually a family friend to her parents. Let's see, where is the quote? Because it's badass. Many within the Clinton administration protested against her appointment, claiming that she wouldn't be able to handle the older men she'd regularly deal with. Rice, however, developed a reputation for her direct, plain-spoken opinions and ability to bring people to her side at the table. They have no choice but to deal with me on professional terms. I represent the United States of America. So, like, that's just awesome. That was in 97, and she was a Black woman. So it was just, you know, even though it was in the 90s, we all know that was a different time. And for her just to be this incredible force to be reckoned with really helped propel her career. In high school, she was the valedictorian, president of the student council, a star point guard. When she was at Stanford, she was on the student government there, and she turned heads with some of the top administrators at the university when she created a fund that withheld alumni donations until the university either stopped their investments to companies doing business in South Africa or South Africa ended apartheid. So that was just so awesome that at the time she was like, nope, we're not doing this anymore. So she just has always been a force to be reckoned with. I mean, she's a Scorpio, so she's got that Scorpio energy. So you can take with that what you will. Now, when she joined the Obama administration, she was confirmed in January of 2009 to be the ambassador to the UN. Things were going quite well up until the end of the first term, when a little thing called Benghazi happened. Y'all remember Benghazi, or at least you've heard it at some point. That's an American zeitgeist buzzword. She was one of the folks that kind of was named as one of the conspirators in the Benghazi conspiracy. For those that don't necessarily know what the hell Benghazi was, you just know it was a really bad movie starring Jim from The Office. It was in 2012, there was an online video that came out that was called The Innocence of the Muslims. And it basically had a caricature of Allah, and Allah, like, you're not allowed to show depictions of him in any way. So it had this character that was Allah, and it was very offensive, and it got circulated wildly, and at the time became unanimous with this violence and rioting that started to happen in Libya, and it ended in Benghazi at the U.S. Embassy, where 2 diplomats ended up getting killed by rioters, as well as 2 CIA operatives. So 4 Americans were killed. And Susan Rice, basically they were like, the White House was like, we need someone to go on the Sunday shows, which are like Meet the Press and all these shows on Sundays, to talk about what the hell is going on. Hillary can't do it. Susan, will you do it? And she was like, oh my God, for real, this is awful. You need me to, okay, I guess I'll do it. So she went on, she did it, and she gave the intelligence she had at the time, which is what that Innocence of the Muslims was linked to the rioting, and it led eventually to violence at the embassy. That ended up being proved to be incorrect intelligence when there was an extremist organization called, hold on, I wrote it down, Ansar al-Sharia eventually took credit for the attacks. And then emails were leaked that showed communication back and forth from Ben Rhodes, who is another national security official, and Susan Rice, with talking points for her to go on the Sunday shows with, which is very common. But these talking points were basically linked by Republicans as being like this cover-up plot and a way to skirt responsibility when they should have known that there was an extremist organization that was plotting these attacks. And so it led this whole thing where then Hillary Clinton sat in hours and hours of committee hearings and eventually lost a freaking election. So anyway, she's tied to that, which is not great. However, and there's one other thing about her that is a super fun is she has a son named John David Rice Cameron, who is at Stanford now or graduated recently. And he is a very avid Donald Trump supporter. And he was the president of the Stanford University College Republicans and hosted an event called Make Stanford Great Again. They obviously are family, and they love each other dearly, and they have their differences. But that would be very interesting if she was the vice presidential nominee and he's a avid Trump supporter. It'd be like, I don't know if anybody follows, my sister knows, she can put it in the chat. Kellyanne Conway's daughter is like this super crazy, like leftist TikToker who it's been great. Claudia, there it is. So I don't know how those two do it, but I wouldn't love it. I'd be very detrimental to the campaign potentially, but like just to see that dynamic would be super cool. And those are mine. So there we go.
TikTok and politics. Who would have ever thought, we were sitting in our living rooms last year, some of these headlines and these things that we see today without context, having seen them, a year ago would just sound insane because it is. So, but thank you, Ross. Thank you so much for giving us a quick little rundown on those 2 potential candidates. It's so exciting, you guys. I'm so happy that we did this, and it's so, timely. We should be getting the official names pretty soon. Ross, what are your predictions as far as when do you think this information would be released?
There was rumors that was going to be this week. I don't think it's going to be this week anymore. I know that like the vice president is doing his like last kind of round of interviews and conversations with the women. So the convention is on the 17th. We'll know before then. So at most we got like, what's today, the 5th? We got 12 days at most. But it'll probably happen before then. I would guess next week at some point.
Wow. Okay. Really exciting stuff. And you heard it here first. We ran down the list and now you guys all have some preliminary information. As always, we encourage you to do your own research. Look things up, read, watch watch interviews on certain candidates. And within that, we do, as per usual, want to respect everybody's time, and we really enjoy being able to be kind of like bite-sized information just in your weekly schedules. So we do try to keep our segments down to an hour. So within that, I just want to firstly thank everybody for coming out and spending your Wednesday with us. Again, we're weekly on Wednesdays. Reclaim Our Vote, 7 o'clock. It's always the same link. So save it, put it in your notes, send it to friends. We definitely need each other to be informed in real time. So, it's going to be our job to make sure that the people around us are all on the same page, that we're going to be, whether we're mailing in our ballots or we're going out to the polling stations, whatever it is, we've got to know what's going on and what we need to do to make it happen. And everybody just needs to be really enthusiastic about voting this time around for obvious reasons. No matter where you stand on the fence with that, going out and voting is extremely important. Always has been, but just more so than ever, we're seeing what happens when you don't take advantage of your constitutional rights. And so if you're not following us on Instagram, please be sure to do so. It's at Reclaim Our Vote. Don't forget to keep in touch also with our beautiful partners at Be an Ally, and it's an _ and then also at Black Boys Recycle. If you are not part of our emailing list, which we send out these videos that are recorded, and any like donations or anything that we mention about certain organizations that we want to highlight that you can, spend your happy hour money at, which we unfortunately didn't do this time, but
No, I have one. I got it.
She's got to reclaim our happy hour, guys. So we're not at the bar spending money. So let's put our beer money to good use. Kyle, what do you have to present to us tonight?
One is raising funds for the people of Beirut. And it's raising funds for a number of NGOs who are helping people. It's not affiliated with the Lebanese Red Cross, which can be good in some way, shape, or form. So that's, and I'll put it in the chat. It's help-lebanon.org, and that'll send you straight, .me, and that'll send you straight to their donation. And then there's also a Lebanese food bank, and that is at Leb Food Bank, which I'll put also, that's their Instagram, and I'll put their donation link as well in there, because to be going through a pandemic and then for that to happen, I mean, all those explosives sitting in that dirty, bad shipping, whatever, for 6 years, I can't even get over it. And I have one more thing. A friend of mine is doing this thing that's called, it's basically it's a virtual meeting that lays out the history of the police system in the US and envisions how we can safely plan for a future without police. And it's called Abolition House Party. It's tomorrow night at 6 p.m. I will put the link in there for that as well. It's obviously totally free. My friend Matthew Raymond is heading it up, and it's just super cool.
Awesome. And you'll be able to put those in Kyle, she does our mailing list, so we're so thankful for her. Are you going to be able to put both of those links in the recap? Do those go out tomorrow, or do you wait till Thursday?
No, so Mondays are when the emails go out, or at least I try. So the Abolition House Party, I'll try and put in our chat right now, but
okay, yes. The donation
organizations I'll also put in our weekly email, which if you, I think you'd said if you're not on it, just DM our Instagram.
Yes, please do. Yes, DM us. And then also if you have any suggestions, which we got some last week, which is really exciting. If you have any topics that you want us to cover, if you want to lead a segment, or, you know, you feel like you have specialized knowledge in, or just genuinely curious about something that pertains to voting and our everyday life, please DM us as well. We'd love to hear some suggestions, and perhaps if you want to be a guest speaker, we would love that too. But within that, usually this time, we do stop our recording and we thank you for coming, but we don't go. If you are wanting to, you can stick around. We have our chat open. You're welcome to unmute yourself if you have any, you know, personal feelings on different candidates. If we didn't cover anything, if you know something that we don't, again, we are just here as a forum and as a discussion board, just to kind of bounce information back and forth. So yeah, if you would like to speak on anything